Hey everyone, Greg here. As you may know by now, I'm the co-founder and CEO of TripShock, an online reseller for water sports and tours. For the past 12 years, we've had the pleasure of working with hundreds of operators across the country, and we're looking to grow our community. It's free to sign up, and you only pay when we bring you confirmed bookings. We'll help you reach new customers, fill empty seats, and grow your business like so many have done with us over the years. Head over to partners.tripshock.com to learn more about our program, read testimonials, or speak directly with our supply team. As always, thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
And back in the day, before the laws, there was these owner operators that were scurvy, man. Like they'd wait for everyone to shut down and then go out there and fly because the phone's ringing off the hook and everybody wants to parasail.
They come to relax, enjoy the beach, have fun, and spend money. And that's where we come in. This is the Awkward Watersport Guys podcast. Find out tips on the best ways to market and operate a water sports business. If you're a water sports operator, you need to grow your brand, operate more safely, upgrade your operations, and of course, increase bookings. We're industry veterans, broadcasting from Destin, Florida. This is the Awkward Watersport Guys podcast. And this is Kevin O'Neill and Greg Fisher.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Awkward Watersports Guy podcast. Yes. I'm your host, Greg Fisher, here with my great and wonderful co-host, Kevin O'Neill.
I'm here.
And we have an exciting show. We're going to jump into operations, kind of get off that marketing train for a moment. And Kevin, how are things going this week?
Safe. Super duper safe. Because at the end of last week, or the end of our last podcast, I alluded to
saving somebody.
Because I was I jumped in the water.
So let's start with that. I want to hear it.
Okay, it's funny, man. So, we get these jet skiers that come in, and every time they get into slow motion near the dock, they have two options. They can either try and dock it themselves with help from my dock hand, or they come up alongside the floating dock. They get off and we dock it for them. So every time a really inexperienced person tries to dock themselves, they're trying to figure it out. Should I dock it myself? Should I let him dock it? And then the dock hand's going all right, just come on up close. They go real slow. And when we're, those jet skis can hold 400, 450 pounds. And when we're at that level, when it's a full 450 on the jet ski, they get what we call tippy. They're easy to flip over. So yeah, I would say maybe 3/4 of that 450 pounds flipped the jet ski. She went in, and I did my best David Hasselhoff running, dove off the dock. I was just everybody out of my way, dove in, in my mind, it probably looked way sweeter than
Did you rip your shirt off and just jump right in?
I had to take everything. I had to take my phone out of my pockets, keys, took my watch off, very quickly. I've done it 100 times as a parasail mate and captain. So yeah, I ripped everything off, dove into the water, and then she was getting near the pylons. And in North Florida, pylons have these razor sharp oyster shells on them. So I'm and I swear all the time, I swear at my kids, when it comes to danger, when I'm trying to stop something from something, I screamed, do not touch that fucking pylon. That's exactly why I spoke to a customer. But I don't give a shit, because I'd rather you be I don't like the way you talk to me, than slitting open your hand and needing 50 stitches or something like that. So I jump in the water. I put her on I get underneath her and hoist her up onto the ski. She basically, I'm underwater using her as a stepping, I'm cupping my hands together and she's stepping on my hands and I'm trying to get her up onto the jet ski. So I get her on the ski. She goes, I'm don't touch the throttle, don't touch anything. I push it over to the dock, and then I have the dock hand give her a hand, get her off the ski. I have my dock hand drive the jet ski over to the dock, and then I swim.
Did she flip it over, or did she fall off?
Oh yeah, she flipped it. Yeah. So I flipped the ski back over, got her back on the ski, got her on the dock, and did my thing. So
I'm surprised she was able to get back up. It's hard even for someone that's not.
That's what I'm saying. So I flipped the ski over, and then there's there's a fold down little ladder thing, and she put one foot on that, and then I grabbed her other foot, and together we used her zero body strength and all of my strength.
Yeah, that ladder is key.
Yeah, and got her. She was She was a hefty, hefty lady, man. That was for sure. She was very happy. She laughed about the whole thing. It was great. Nobody got hurt, but that's not always the case. And historically, speaking, it's not the case, but there is that 0.01% chance. And it doesn't matter if you're snorkeling, if you're renting a boat, if you're diving, if you're parasailing, if you're jet skiing, if you're paddleboarding, if you're kayaking, you name it. Renting a boat, there's inherent danger in this whole thing. And there's a lot of practices that, we as an industry have to mitigate. We have to mitigate litigation, but most importantly, we have to mitigate injuries and people getting killed. So it's a super important topic. And any operator that's listening to this that has safety, that doesn't have safety at the forefront of their operation and have firewalls insulating them from people getting hurt, and then also from litigation, frivolous lawsuits. People hurt themselves all the time and then try and say that, oh, it's your fault. People do the dumbest stuff and then try and blame, the operator for it. And it was like, well, this is 100% your fault. So, and then there's times where it was 100% the operator's fault.
What's really hard about it is when someone gets severely hurt, and because of the litigious nature of our business, you care about that customer, but you can't say anything to them at the same time. And I remember when I had my ski business, someone got hurt very bad, and it was 100% their fault. They were horse playing. They ran into each other. We literally saved this woman's life by getting her back to the docks and getting her into, calling 911 and getting her to the hospital in time. But, we felt bad, and one of my employees actually brought flowers to her, and I got upset with her, and she's like, why don't we care about? I'm like, yes, we do care. But by buying flowers and calling them and doing all that kind of, it might make it like we're at fault.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, that's kind of crazy. I'm like, I know it's crazy, but that's just the unfortunate, situation that we deal with.
Tort reform.
Yeah. In order to make our businesses sustainable, because that anything we do to, that could question the legitimacy of the incident, that's something we have to always think about. And it's hard because we're like, humans care about each other.
That's right.
In nature. And the fact that we can't care about not just another human, but a customer is really tough for us. So,
and look, at the end of your day, and as kind of crazy as it sounds, like the wheels have still got to keep turning, because if you go skydiving, it's very rare, but sometimes chutes don't open. So, people have to understand that going into any of this, like there carries an inherent amount of risk. Like, and that's why you're paying the money to go do it. Like you can say, yes, like everybody's going to be okay and it's very safe and you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But so is getting in your car. But that doesn't, negate the fact that millions of Americans die in automobile accidents every day. So if you're going to jump out of a plane, if you're going to go bungee jumping, if you're going to go parasailing, if you're going to get on a jet ski, you've got to understand that you are taking a risk, because you're partaking in a risky activity. And that's why, all of us, you have to, well, maybe you don't have to. I'm pretty sure you have to when it comes. I know for boat rentals and jet skis, you have to carry a minimum of $1 million of liability. And then certain, hoteliers want you, especially if you're operating out of their premises, want to see $5 or $10 million policies. So,
like when we sign up suppliers to work with TripShock, we do look at their insurance, and sometimes we turn people away with very little, coverage. I've seen boat operators. I don't know how they get it, but I've seen people operating boats and jet ski rentals under $1 million.
It would behoove you to ask for a copy of all of your partners' loss runs. Yeah. Because if you can take a look at their loss runs, you can actually see the history of claims that they had then. So if you say, like, how long have you been in business? They've been in business for 5 years. Mm-hmm. And we say, well, I'm going to need to see your last 5 years of loss runs. So if an employer if somebody has a history of accidents and you sign them without knowing what their loss run history is, you're also complicit. We work with a couple
hundred water sport operators, and it always kind of in the back of my mind, I know we require a certain amount of insurance. If the insurance is not enough, we've turned businesses away, but I haven't checked beyond that. So that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that.
So
today we've, obviously we're in the safety topic, but we're going to drill down a little bit further in safety, such as maybe some ideas that you can use in your business to mitigate potential situations, maybe some products and services that you can add to your fleet to also help mitigate any risk. And some of the products we've used personally, some of them that are in the market, and these are just some suggestions to look through.
Yeah, by no means is anyone sponsored. Some of the products that I'm going to bring up, I've seen in use. I can't attest to the efficacy of them because every situation is different. So I think the first most important thing when it comes to water sports, and I don't care if you're renting boats or going parasailing and doing tours, doing jet skis, going sailing, dolphin, know the weather and make sure that you're not the only one out there. Like, that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to have somebody out there that can help if you get in a sticky situation. Like, together we stand, united we fall. What? Right? No, together we stand, united. No, wait. Divided we fall. Geez, yeah. Man, oh my God. I get better civics. Divided we fall. And so I learned this very much so with parasailing. There was incidents back in 2009 in North Carolina. There was an incident in 2013 in the British Virgin Islands, and both times the operator was out there by themselves. And that was the mitigating factor in, whether they decided to prosecute the captain for negligence. Okay. And these both resulted in homicides.
Kevin, one thing I'm somewhat confused about is there's a lot of regulations between, local, and federal regarding boating. Like, you have to, if you're a captain, you have to have a captain's license if you're running charters.
Yeah.
You have to, for certain, like, local municipalities, you need to have a certain licensing to rent. Yep. But why isn't there anything regarding, let's say that if the wind is at, a certain knots,
there is in Florida.
Then why do some parasail boats, for example, run and some do not? Is it a guideline or is it a rule that people just don't follow?
Okay. So I'm going to try and condense this, the White Miskel Act. So for anybody that doesn't know, and this is generally when you're looking at insurance, when you go to fill out the paperwork for insurance, there's a couple actual water sport commercial insurance policies. I'm going to go ahead and plug Mike Suskin from Lloyd's of London. I love him. He's great. He's been in the industry 20 years. Everybody uses him. We left him to go with a different insurance company. We're going to go back to him this year. The guy just is phenomenal. He's he's been through it all. He knows it all.
Yeah, I use Mike for my ski business.
Yeah, Mike Suskin, Lloyd's of London is the underwriter. He writes for a different couple different insurance companies, but going back to it, when you go with a water sport specific, because you can go through different commercial entities that'll write you that aren't water sport specific. So you really got to go through that insurance and make sure that everything that you're getting, your lease of liability is on point. So that's why I like Mike, because they provide the most airtight release of liability. When I moved, my insurer, I said, do you have a specific release of liability do you want me to use? And they go, oh, just use the one you got from First Flight. Because First Flight is like the first name in water sports insurance. They're also the most expensive. But they make you go through a rigorous, like, what do you do in this? What do you do in this? What do you do in that? What do you do in this? Like, they want you to know. And if you're writing for parasail, you have to have 500 flights underneath your belt. The captain's got to be a First Flight certified captain. You have to have references from other captains. Like, it's crazy hard to get onto First Flight insurance.
But who's policing it?
Okay, so in the state of Florida, it's supposed to be like the Coast Guard and the FWC, like together. So that's the problem. So, and specifically in parasail, the law, and the law just mirrors First Flight's insurance rules. All right. So, the insurance, it used to be back in the day before the law happened, it was 17 knots, 400 yards away from any fixed object, no parasailing within 7 miles, those were the main ones. Those were the main ones. The wind, the storms, and then they got into different size chutes, but whatever. So they stopped insuring 42s, these huge, big, giant chutes, because a storm grabbed them like they were the biggest killer of people, because you just couldn't get them down. They were too big, too huge canopies, and when they're under pressure, it was just like a runaway freight train. Anyway, so they came up with that because a guy by the name of McCullough, I can't remember his name, but he's like the original, he's like the de facto parasail guru. I believe he's involved with the WSIA, but McCullough, I can't remember his first name. He like basically wrote all these rules and said like, this is the safety threshold at which you can fly at. So First Flight also kind of just uses those conditions for almost anything, for boating, for jet skiing, for tours, for whatever it may be. So they basically use those same type of rules. So when the White-Miskell Act, which was named after two separate fatalities. One was in Florida and one was in North Carolina. The White-Miskell Act got written based off of these insurance guidelines. So, I mean, when they came down to it, but that's the problem, because 17 knots isn't 17 knots. It's 17 sustained, gusting to 20, I believe, or 20 knots. But that's a very difficult thing. Like wind doesn't really work like that. You know, in some spots, 10 meters off the water, 30 meters off the water. I mean, if I'm parasailing back behind a building and something happens, well, it wasn't 20 knots right there. And it was, so it's very, you know, and then there's no regulatory agency that says like, well, you should be using this app versus that app. So I use a bunch of different apps. So I use NOAA. I use Windfinder. Those are mostly my main two. I use W Underground. And then I take all three of those, and then I make a decision, because up here in the North Florida, the conditions are just so random. Like down south, you look on the water, you can see from 20 miles away something coming, like, and it all has prevailing winds, and it's got winds pushing behind it. It's very, very uniform. Here, it's like, oh my God, here comes a beast from the east. You know, here comes the wicked witch of the west. Here comes something to build off the north and circled from the south, like, because we're at the top of the Gulf Stream. So wind around or weather around here is just, you can't, no matter what, predict it. And so what you can do is mitigate. You talk to the other companies. You make decisions together. You don't do cowboy shit. You know, it's just, and parasail is very much like that. And, you know, these guys, we're all going to call it. We all shut it down together. You know, nobody goes out there and does that. And back in the day, you know, before the laws, you know, there was these owner operators that were scurvy, man. Like they would wait for everyone to shut down and then go out there and fly, because the phone's ringing off the hook and everybody wants to parasail. Well, the winds are too high. But back in the day, the winds have been 25 to 30 and you were flying, you know?
So there really is no, like, the Coast Guard or the FWC. There's no one really telling you.
If there's an accident. If there's an accident, there is.
Okay, but there's no one really telling these businesses that you can't go out today. There's just guidelines.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. I don't know, maybe in some weird county, like somewhere there's some like Coast Guard that's like, there's the blowing 17 knots. You better pull that sail down. Because when the law first got passed, that's what we thought. So it was like when you would go out and it was right on that borderline, and you'd have all these captains standing on the bows of their boat with anemometers or wind readers, I forget what they're called, standing there holding the wind and then getting a reading and then looking at no one, trying to figure it out. No one knew what to do. Should we pop? Should we fly? It's 18 miles an hour, but it's 17. You know what I mean? Like, it's just changing because that's what wind does. So no one knew.
I would think that most operators will look at the conditions. They'll look on whatever app they use and make a pretty good call, because they don't want their customers getting hurt. They don't want their business having any hardship because of it.
Let's get real. Yeah. No, I mean, let's get real. And that's not always the case, because we know from before that 17 knots that you could fly with a 33 or a 31. Like, you could go out there in a little bit higher than that and still get the job done, and people were safe. Like in the 80s and 90s, there was no laws. There was no wind readers. There was no apps. Like, you went and got drug around. I mean, I knew a guy who, before they had zippers in those chutes, they just slit them. He puts big slits down the chutes to open up the sail more so more wind could pass through it so he could fly in higher winds. Because it was just, you didn't have 100,000 people flying every day. There was just a handful of people, and it was just, no one was getting killed.
But if let's say you have 10 operators in Destin, there's lots of operators, but let's say one of those operators consistently flies in more dangerous conditions, wouldn't it not be a bad idea for there to be a regulatory body to say, hey guys, we're done for the day. Like maybe the Coast Guard or the FWC, just to protect the integrity of the business. Just parasailing in general.
Wind isn't static. Like it changes. So like, all right, we're shut down for the day, and then 2 hours later it's 10 miles an hour. So it's like the industry has got to police itself. And again, it's not just parasail. We'll take it to boat rentals.
Yeah, boat rentals.
Like
snorkeling, everything.
Yeah, we call routinely. I call our competitors. They're not my competitors. We work together because we all want the same thing. We want everyone to come back safe. So you talk amongst yourselves. If you're new and you're getting out there and you're like, what should I do? Should I send somebody? The first thing I got here was I called one of our competitors and I said, hey man, what are you doing? Are you sending boats out today? Like, I don't know. I'm looking at the weather. Like, this looks kind of sketchy. I'm not really sure what to do in this situation, because normally we just come over the VHF radio and say like, hey man, are we going to parasail today? And everybody's like, we're shutting down. Everybody shuts down. But here, especially with the boat rentals, because it's not like, the boat rental part of things. And so the reason I'm using these two illustrations is in the world of water sports is like a boat rental is pretty benign, and a parasail is going to be one of the most extreme. So between those two, you have everything else. So this applies to going snorkeling, renting jet skis. On your livery, it says, when you're testing something, it says like, what is a indicator of bad weather approaching? And they have 4 different things they can build, and it's a buildup of dark clouds. So yeah, when you're looking out there, if you see a buildup of dark clouds and you're staring at the sky and you're looking underneath that buildup of dark clouds and it's got like a white or light blue sheer underneath the bottom of it, that's wind. Mm-hmm. So heavy winds, like those are the things that topple boats. So that's another thing. So you have to make people aware, and you have to train them, and you have to make sure that they have the tools. No matter what we are doing, no matter what you're doing, you have to make sure that they understand this is a no wake zone if you're operating a jet ski. Hey, if you're in trouble out there snorkeling, you wave your arms over your head. You put the fist to your head to let them know that you're okay. So training and educating your customer, making sure that they've signed every single release of liability and that you have a copy of it, and that everybody is on the same page, that we all understand this is what it's going to be like.
Would you say that if you're questioning whether or not to put someone out, it's probably not a good idea to put somebody out?
No, not at all. No, because there's always going to be questionable days. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, because if you 100% of the time, you just be out of business. It's just like, hey boys, we're going to call it.
In Florida, it rains every day.
That's right.
Or thunder. There's a storm could come through. I think it was like 2 days ago, a storm came through.
But you can still mitigate it. So here's how we mitigate it with boat rentals. Okay. So when somebody goes out and it's questionable, I let them know it's questionable. And I'm saying, listen, I don't think there's anything to be worried about, but that doesn't mean I couldn't be wrong. Something crazy could come through. We're monitoring and you need to monitor your phone. So if you get a text or a call from us telling you that there's something coming in and you need to come in, you need to come in. The first rule of boating, just like, what was that guy? He fell in the cave and then he had cut his own arm off, 127 hours. You don't remember that movie?
No.
He went hiking by himself and he fell in a cave and he got his arm lodged, and he sawed his own arm off with a Swiss Army knife, with the dull Swiss Army knife, and lived. And he does motivational speaking tours. He's like, if you've never seen the movie, it's called 127 Hours with James, what's his name, man? That handsome devil. The guy, he was in Spider-Man.
James Franco?
Yeah, James Franco.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I said handsome devil, you knew. Yeah. But he didn't leave a plan. So when boating, you're supposed to leave a plan. You're supposed to let people know where you're going. You're supposed to let somebody know where you're going. This is how people get found when they get stranded.
So do you typically ask your guests,
yes,
where are you going today?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. And we direct them in different areas. Oh, we really want to go to Crab Island. It's nice. It's going to be really choppy over there today. We had it today. Customer, you know, that, and it's like, I told you 100 times, Crab Island is going to be choppy. Like, go to the east. There's a beautiful island over that way. You can have fun, you know, but, you know, if you're hell bent on wanting to go where you want to go, it's not dangerous, but to a novice boater, it's like, oh, I'm in the high seas. And they see this thing in their head that you're standing there going, just anchor the boat and walk out. It's 3 feet of water. Walk to shore, you'll be fine.
So this brings up a good time to introduce a product that can track your boats
GPS,
and track your skis, GPS trackers.
Yep. I can't tell you, I use SpyTech and it was a horrible experience with them, like trying to like cancel. But so I can't give you like, if you just Google like GPS fleet trackers, there's going to be a myriad of them that you're going to be able to find.
Yeah, 5 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot to choose from, but now there's a lot. And I think it's mainly because of the technology, the 5G, everything's getting much better and affordable. Before, it was not affordable. They didn't have the cell network as strong as it is today. So that if you have especially expensive boats you're renting, like those really expensive center console. Some people rent.
Yeah, and if you're allowing them into the ocean, you better make sure they have EPIRBs. You know, an EPIRB is going to be a device that if the boat capsizes is going to go in the water and it's going to set off a beacon and alert the Coast Guard to where you are. So, I mean, these are all, you know, if you're doing a captain charter, you have to make sure you have the correct portable flotation device. You have to have a PFD1. There's a lot of people that get into this game that go and do things and like they're getting held up by the Coast Guard for, you know, forever because they didn't realize, well, I have to have this and I have to have this and I have to have that. And
Kevin, do you document their projected location in your reservation system or on paper?
No. What we do is we make sure our dockhand directly has their phone numbers and they have our dockhand's phone numbers. Okay. So if they can call and they need help or something like that, like there's not 8 channels to go to. My dockhand is in our chase boat. That's another thing. I keep a chase boat in our fleet. So all of our rentals have like 50s, 60s, 70s. My chase boat's got a 250 on it and I don't rent it out. And it costs me a lot of money. But at the end of the day, there's no, like, if I got to go save somebody, then. I'm
really surprised that operators don't have chase boats or chase skis. I just think that's such a liability. Really, it comes down to is money.
Absolutely.
People are like, oh man, I can rent this boat. I'll make extra $500 today. But the reality is,
that's right.
You know, you could be in a lot of trouble if someone gets, you know, stranded and then it's not easy to call like Sea Tow. They're not going to be out there.
I saw a picture yesterday of an operator and his ski was the people gone out into the Gulf and his ski got washed up ashore and there was like 6-footers out there. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, how does that happen? You know what I mean? And I think like there was someone who's like, oh, it's the second time this happened. So if that happens to me once, it never happens to me again, ever. Like we brief, and we brief again.
And by asking them where they're going, you kind of put them in the spot. Because if their plans were to take it out into the Gulf and they say, oh, I'm going to go in the Bay, and then, you know, then you tell them, okay, well, if you're going to the Bay, great, but do not go in the Gulf.
We let them know. We're tracking you and we're watching you. And so I just got an email about a product. I didn't even get to look into it. A friend told me about it, and then I got an email about it. It's called Ski Buddy. Again, not plugging them, not saying the efficacy of their product works. I have no idea. But basically what Ski Buddy does creates a geofence that shuts the ski down if people try to go out into, you know, beyond where they're supposed to be going if you're letting free ride. And then that's another thing, like, you know, the free ride model, like, there's not, like, places like Key West have completely got rid of free ride. It's 100% tours because it's like you just can't trust them. And it's because over the years of the lawsuits and the accidents and the lack of education and the lack of training on the part of the operator to make sure that customer completely understands what they have underneath their body.
One thing you just said, which I think would be a great idea for people to brief their customers with, is, you know, even though if you don't have the resources to purchase a geo tracking device or like Jet Ski Buddy or whatever, you can just tell the people, hey, all the skis are tracked. So they're all tracked, and then you can't go in the Gulf. Ask them where they're going. I mean, it's no different than putting a dummy spy cam on your. So
there's actually in First Flight has a policy called line of sight insurance. Like there's like, and First Flight is basically like, all right, You have to have them in a riding zone. Like they just can't take off.
When we switched over to First Flight the last year I had my jet ski business, we had to have a spotter.
And that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I don't even do past 2 hours. And if they say that they're going to Crab Island, I'm like, well, and another thing is the, you hammer home the threats. And the threats are, if you're 1 minute late, we start charging you $25 so you don't be late. So because this makes sure that they're watching the clock, that they're not getting lost, that they know that they got to be back, and they're paying attention a little bit more because it's their money. They're like, if I'm late, they're going to charge me.
I'd say when we added the spotter from the year before to the one having the spotter, we had people coming back on time so much more than we did before, and people were riding more safely overall.
My spotters are on our docks because I don't do more than 2 hours, and I rarely let them go to Crab Island.
Yeah, we had an enclosed marina, so we couldn't see people outside. Yeah. So they used a high vis vest and just rode around and watched people, and they were much better when we had a spotter.
Absolutely, less damage.
But the big thing, which with this cost us real dollars, is when they're showing up 30 minutes late. Like they couldn't even find, our marina was tough to find. If you ventured out in Wolf Bay in Alabama, you're not going to, unless you're familiar with the waters, you're going to struggle finding the entrance to the marina. So by having the spotter, they can flag down the spotter and they can get back much
and that's
faster.
The same thing with like snorkel too, you know. I mean, and there are laws on that, you know. When you have to have a mate, and if you're running 50, 100 people, like you can never be too careful. You can watch and you can watch those dollars and and look at those labor costs. But if safety isn't first, and you're like, man, I'm not making any money on this trip because I have so many employees because we're being okay. Well, then to go back to marketing a little bit. Well, your pricing model's wrong. You need to put the money into that. And then from a liability standpoint, it's like you spend the money because in the long run, it could save your business. It could save a life. The other one for parasail is Chute Wrangler. You know, this thing called the Chute Wrangler. And I don't know how, I mean, I've seen the demos on it and it works like in theory, like I don't know into how high wind it works, but you know, if you have it on the boat and at least you tried, you know, maybe it could have saved somebody's life. I don't know. Like I've never been in a position where I was like, oh my God, I need a Chute Wrangler, you know, like we were the Chute Wranglers. But if there's any products that you can pay for that, again, it's like, man, it seems kind of expensive, or, you know, having an extra spotters, like the labor, like nothing is worth someone's life. Like it's an extra $100. Like I'd always say when somebody would say to me and it was a dangerous condition and they're trying to argue with me to go out, and this happened all the time. Yep. Well, we really want to go out. We really want to go out. I'm like, hey, look, maybe you don't value your life above $50, but I do. And that's what operators really, really, really need to understand and focus on. It's that like the immediacy. I get it. We only have so much time to make the money. At the end of the day, though, these people are trusting us with their lives, and you have to use every available resource that you can, not only to protect them, but to protect your business in the event that something goes wrong, whether it was their fault, was your fault, was your captain's fault, no matter whose fault it was, that we did the right things. This brings me as far as the litigation and a product I know you use, a product we're just integrating as we speak right now. I think within the next couple of days it'll be up. And again, no plugs. We're using them. I thought they were a great product to begin with. There's a ton of advantage to them, I see. And initially it was a marketing advantage that I saw, but after, you know, just a kind of a crazy week or whatever, I saw the efficacy of having those waivers stored and having them stored forever. And there's a product called Werewolf, and they're not the only ones that do it. They have so many different functionalities to them and like good branding, all that stuff, that I thought it was like, man, this is definitely a cool product. But the coolest thing about that product is that no matter what, if you're using paper release forms, like, so I can't tell you how many times my guys leave their clipboard sitting down on the dock. And I'm like, hey, look, it's the thing that proves that you went over everything and that everyone signed off on all the safety stuff. And that proves that we taught them how to use this thing and made sure that they understood, like, you're doing this at your own risk. Like that piece of paper could save me in a court of law and prove that I did everything in my power to keep that customer safe. And it's just sitting there on the dock about to blow out the clipboard and get flown
it's-
away.
it's
So
unfortunate.
you keep that in the
happens way too
digital realm
often.
and you have that forever. And like you can go back X amount of years and just go, oh, what was your name? What was the date? Boom, 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 boom. Oh, here's the video that I sent you. First Flight's got a video for jet skis. You know, here's the thing that you clicked on, the terms and services, and that yes, you read over everything and that you completely understand what you are about to get yourself into. Now, if it was on us and we did something wrong, then okay. But you know, if you didn't and you did something stupid that resulted in you getting hurt, well, when we go to court, here it is.
You know, I've rented a lot of, you know, water kayaks and jet skis all, you know, for several years, just being in this business. I like to do these things too. And when I fill out the waiver paperwork, I mean, I could literally fudge it so easily.
Yeah.
And so even I think the best software in the world or the best process in the world, your team still has to look over that stuff and make sure it matches I feel like that part of check-in is still needs a lot of work, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just you know, and you got to think like you have 100 people at your window. You're trying to get checked in to go on your rentals, and you know, your team might want to cut corners, but that's something that you cannot cut corners with, because that document could be whether you stay in business for 5 more years or be done tomorrow in case an incident happens.
Yeah. So,
when people come in, obviously, you know, you're there on the front lines. How do you guys differ to maybe what other companies might do when they're filling the paperwork? Do you kind of review their driver's license and if they're who they are?
Everything. I mean, we hammer it, man. Like and again, I don't mean to be this I am like a safety Nazi, man. Like I am crazy about it. Like I am so crazy about safety. Like it just, I make them, we highlight all the state stuff. We highlight all the most important stuff right at check-in. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Take this, go read this. Come back when everything's signed. Check off on it. Cool. Thanks. Done. They head on down. They get to meet one of my doc guys. My doc guys have another checklist for them. They're like, all right, now let's get into the nuts and bolts of everything. Let's talk about everything that you just signed, everything you just looked at. Let's go over the boat. Let's go over where you can go. Let's go where you can't. Here's a map. Here's this. Here's that. And like the day of play trip, like that's why, you know, that's initially why I wanted to do that trip. Like, make money, of course, but I knew that it was the safest way of keeping people safe, having spotters on jet skis, keeping them corralled in an area, having people standing on by while they're playing on the slides, rescue divers, like all this stuff. Like, I was like, man, like, I know that, yes, I've seen these combo trips happen, and yes, injuries are still, no matter what, injuries are going to happen. I mean, when you're doing double backflips off an inflatable, you can put everything in writing that you want, but you know, and do everything right the same way, but it's not going to mitigate, like people are still going to get hurt. People are still going to die. But so when I was so crazy about that. So when we switch over to a rental model rather than just a tour excursion model, we definitely kept that ethos very much alive.
There are so many advantages to digital waivers than there is to paper. I mean, I have probably 500 waivers in a closet right now. And I look at half of them, they're all like water stained and coffee ripped up, crumpled. Oh, yeah. And, you know, when you are doing it on a tablet, it's cleaner. And plus, it's the way the forms work. You can't go to the next step without filling that first step. So really it's validating the fields a lot better than if someone did it by paper. You got to trust that your staff is making sure that everything is filled out properly, because it's easy to miss something when you're really busy. I mean, even some of your best employees are not going to be perfect, but when it comes to a digital waiver, it will be perfect.
Yeah.
So, and it's stored. You're not going to worry about the paper going missing.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think they're the statute of limitations for filing a lawsuit. I think they have like a couple years at least. I'd imagine they can go back. So you got to store all that.
I got my paperwork like everywhere. It's ridiculous. I'm like, I don't even know what this is anymore. I've like thrown stuff away, man. You know what I mean? So anybody out there who feels they're going to sue me, I still have your stuff. So I'm just not you particularly. Yours I still have. I'm
a huge proponent of digital waivers.
Yeah, me too.
Huge. And anytime someone, you know, asks me about their waivers, I'm like, you need to be digital. And, you know, TripShock, we have our own proprietary reservation software, and we are looking at doing an integration with a waiver.
Werewolf, right?
Yeah. We're going to look at doing an integration with Werewolf to give our operators the chance to having, a seamless experience with on digital waiver. We just feel like that is such an important piece to, running your business. I don't care who you are. I mean, I even see other things. Like I went to a trampoline park. They're digital waivers now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Went to Ratchet Hatchet, the axe throwing. They're doing digital. I mean, everything in digital waivers. It's the way of the future.
And guess what else you get? Those sweet, sweet emails. Oh, yeah.
And do you get discounts on your insurance by going to digital waivers? Is that a thing? No. They do a discount for providing a video. And that's the other cool thing about that platform is you can include that and force them to watch that instructional video and then do it again on site. Like I'm a huge proponent of that. Like do it and do it and do it again. I don't care if it took you 45 minutes before you leave on this boat in inclement weather, or before you leave on this jet ski and it's your first time, you are going to know the rules, the laws, and I will terminate your ride and I will keep your money if you break my rules. Because at the end of the day, look, it's about you being safe. It's about keeping the customers safe. Like, man, I can't tell you how many times, like, I've seen or heard about or been on site. I've had friends that fell off the top of a schooner and died. You know what I mean? I've been on site for, people just having heart attacks out in the water. Like, this is not what we do, man. I think that digital waivers are going to be a requirement very soon.
Oh,
I mean, the FWC is already, making
for the liveries. Yeah.
The paper boaters
They're getting rid
test,
of the papers.
They're going to be obsolete. So if you're running paper boaters test in Florida, you're going to have to find something else.
Not true. That's
really?
Not true. There's grandfathers like me. Yeah. So they're grandfathering in. So you can still do paper and you can still get the paper test from them as long as you were in business before. But eventually they will. They will completely phase all of it out because it's just. But if like myself and a couple other operators can still do the paper form, but the new liveries all going to be online. And then they switched it from 12 months to 90 days. Yeah, that's a money grab right there. That's what that is.
I really think. I mean, it's a little more expensive because it's
$10 versus $3.
Because there's third party companies that are partnered with the FWC.
Where's my $1 per test, by the way, too? Because that company's supposed to give me $1 per test. I've never gotten a check one from them. I better look into that. They owe me $500.
I really think that is going to help in more than one way because if all of your customers take the test prior to arrival, then it's going to hopefully shorten the check-in time and make for a better experience for all of your guests.
That's right.
I mean, you have 100 people coming at once and everyone took their test. Then everyone complains about...
Or just getting in line just to get on a boat. If you're going on a 100-person party catamaran or a big sailboat or headboat or big fishing boat and everyone's got to stand in line and fill out all this stuff. I mean, it could definitely does expedite the check-in process.
For skis especially, it's because skis are every 30 minutes to an hour you're turning them around on average. So boats, it's not, there may be 1 or 2 departures a day on a boat, but skis, there's a lot of waivers. I mean, we had a ton of waivers that we had be filled out. If I had digitized that and then had an online boaters test, people can show up. If they took the boaters test, great, but they can do the waivers at home too. So they can come to the
sidebar Werewolf. We're looking for sponsors. Possibly you.
So you could literally come to your rental and have your waiver done, have your boaters test done, and that's going to really help out the logistics of your team.
Absolutely.
Trying to put some. I mean,
so great. So we talk products, we talk liability. Final thoughts.
So when it comes to weather, I totally agree that you should never be the only one out there. And if you're in a situation where you have, competitors that will talk to you, which hopefully you do. Mm-hmm. If you don't, something's not right. Get their opinion and, use your community to help make those decisions.
That's right.
Because you'll be much stronger that way. Always look at tech to balance what you can be doing, with your business. There's tons of advantages to going digital. I guess the biggest disadvantage of it is having to retrain your staff on something new. And I can tell you all about that in another episode about how people, when they switch from paper to digital, all the challenges that come with it. But there are so many more benefits when you go digital with waiver software, boaters test, GPS trackers. This stuff is going to save you time, going to save you money, going to help you mitigate risk, and you're just going to have a better experience. It's all going to kind of even culminate with your brand. People are cognitive ease, which I talk about with my team, is making it easy for the customer to do business with you. And these are what things do, and it's going to save you money and hopefully prevent an incident.
All right, mine are educate and mitigate and innovate. And I just made those three up right there on the spot.
That is really good.
I swear I did not have that planned out. But educate your customers, educate your employees, constantly train, constantly prepare them. Always insulate yourself and your business with making sure that your customers and your team are educated. And even if you have to turn somebody away, because that's the safest choice, you save them, you might have saved their life, you might have saved your business. Always think long term. Innovate. You don't need to follow what everybody else is doing. That's what happens in this industry all the time. Well, company A is doing it, so company B. Now, I know we just said, like, hey, if everyone's calling it, we're going to call it together. That's fine. But just because somebody's doing something and like this is their process safe doesn't mean that you can't like make it better. So I looked at everybody's check-in process and everybody's safety standards, and I looked at everybody. So what are you guys doing? So what are you guys doing? So what are you guys doing? Now, a lot of the times they're calling me and asking me what I'm doing. Because I'm always going to make the safest call. I'm always watching everything, using everything at my disposal to make sure our customers are safe, make sure our employees are safe, make sure that we're operating within the parameters of safety first, fun second. Everybody comes back alive. Everybody has a great time, because at the end of the day, man, that's what these people are paying us for. And that's what our job is. Not just to make money, but it's to make lifetime memories. And we don't want those memories to have some type of catastrophe or injury attached to them, because that's the antithesis of what we do.
Yeah. Well, great. Man, that was a really good podcast.
Yeah, I feel like it was a good one too.
I think this is a good time to do an operations one. We're marketing guys, but man, I think the operations side is really interesting, and it all ties together.
It does. Yeah. It does, because I mean, yeah, man. Hey, it's a great marketing tip. Come on my boat. You won't die. So I think that's it. Episode 3, Awkward Watersports Guys. We really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to everything us two nerdy water sport dudes have to say. I'm Kevin O'Neill. This is Greg Fisher. Fucking let's party.
You've been listening to the Awkward Watersport Guys podcast. If you're in the water sport industry, this is the podcast that brings the business perspective to parasailing, jet and ski boat rentals, sailing, snorkeling, and everything else. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. Be sure to sign up to our email list at watersportpodcast.com and subscribe in your favorite podcast app. We'll see you next time, and thanks for listening.